Okay, so we're live. So it is so good. We haven't had a tea and tarot in a long time, and I'm really super excited about this one because a lot of people have been asking about mediumship, the veil being thinner, Halloween, the full moon, and a lot of questions about connecting with ancestors and people who have crossed over. So when my brother came up and he's like, "Oh, I know the perfect person that we need to go ahead and talk to," I was super excited about it. So Sherwin, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce Ruth.
Okay, well, she's a good friend of mine. I've known her for a very long time. We've went on I would say what psychic excavations and whatnot in New
Psychic
Orleans.
excavations, I like that. Let me close this door.
And we've danced on the Ouija board many times. But this is to everyone. This is Ruth Volinskie, and I'll just let her finish introducing herself.
Thank you both for having me. It's so nice to be invited and to be able to talk and maybe dispel some of the myths about mediumship. So thank you very, very much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good to have you. I'm excited, and I know a lot of people are. They've been waiting for this.
Well, very good. So I have been practicing as a medium for over 10 years now. I've had the wonderful opportunity of being able to do mediumship readings up in Salem, Massachusetts, as well as in my local town of Somerville, and to be able to do readings online to people all over. So it's a wonderful tool for healing.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. As well as a very helpful tool for people who have situations going on that they don't understand, such as Sherwin was talking about, as far as paranormal type, being able to go in and communicate with what is there and help people understand what's going on, makes them comfortable in their homes again.
Mm-hmm. It makes really good sense because I think a lot of people are experiencing, especially with COVID-19 this year, a lot of people are experiencing more activity.
And I think that activity goes on around us all the time. But what COVID did is it gave us that pause where we're in our homes, we're quieter, we're around our family, and we're actually being more present and paying attention. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we're noticing more. Sherwin, when he comes to visit at my house, he gets like a flood of spirits that come to him, so he never has any peace, and he's always like, "There's so many spirits in here." I'm like, "Well, I invite them. Everybody who doesn't want their spirits, I'm like, come on home with me." So my house is like that all the time. But I think people are quieter. They're in their home more. The roads aren't as busy. The outside noises aren't as much right now. So things are more prominent and you can pick up those, your senses are more acute.
No, you're absolutely right. Because I have a gentleman that stays in my bedroom all the time and I don't see him. But a lot of times when other people call or whatever, they're like, "Who's that guy standing in the doorway?" I can feel him, but I never see him. But you're right. When things slowed down, it was like, okay, I think I see a shadow now. I think I'm picking up more. So you're right. Your perception is a little bit more focused.
It is. And then we do have planetary things that are going on. And especially as we get closer to Samhain, Halloween, whatever your term is, where we know that the veil is usually thin. However, I believe it's been thin pretty much this whole year. You have a blue moon coming up this year. We're going to be a Mercury retrograde this year for Halloween. So there's a lot of planetary influences going on too, that people are sensitive to those energies as well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, this Mercury retrograde has really been kicking my butt. And like you said, I think even as a person who's sensitive, a lot more of emotions, a lot more up and downs. I mean, normally my electronics, something always gets fried during this time. So I'm used to that. But I agree with you. I feel like I feel more sensitive going into this retrograde.
Absolutely. A lot of people who are empathic, empaths, they're having a really hard time, even during all of COVID, but especially, with all these different planetary events that keep going on. So it's been kind of a challenging year, but I think a really good year, because it's made a lot of people, have to take inventory of their gifts and of their sense, and really embrace them, because we haven't been given much of a chance. It's kind of kicking you in the butt to take ownership.
It's so true. What do you suggest for people who are struggling, that are going through, their gifts are opening, and it feels chaotic with everything? We have the election coming up. We have so much going on, and as empaths, and a lot of people they're feeling so overwhelmed.
I think it's a lot of self-care. You have to do that self-care. You have to be grounded. You have to, I'll do a lot of times when I'll feel off about something, or I'll find myself like in a bad mood, or I'll do a self-check. I'll just go through and I'll be like, is this mine? Is what I'm carrying mine? Do I have a reason to be feeling this way? Right. As well as sticking with the routine. If I'm out and around a lot of people, or I'm doing a lot of readings, I make sure that I bathe, and, I have, my spiritual bath, my Epsom salts, my whatever I'm going to be doing, but I make sure, I kind of wash it off and don't bring that, with me. But it's a lot of knowing yourself and knowing when that energy is not yours, because we walk around and we pick up pieces of other people's, energy during the day. We'll pick up their, all of a sudden it's like your back's hurting and you're like, well, I didn't do anything. Why is my back hurting? Is that even mine? And then once you realize it's not yours and you release it, then the pain goes away.
Right.
I think it's a lot of self-care and just really knowing yourself, to know if what you're carrying is yours or somebody else's. I don't ever send it back to them. I just release it to the universe, because usually it's something nobody needs back.
Right.
No, you're right. I think a lot of people, especially this year, are feeling more physical. You have a lot of empaths that used to be able to pick up just the emotion. Now you have people who are saying, oh, my head is hurting, or my back feels heavy, or I feel like, there's something on me. Right. So you're absolutely right.
It is.
Sherwin, are you seeing any questions on your side?
Not yet.
Not yet? Sherwin was telling me about a hotel that you stayed in, where everybody left and there was mirrors in the hallway.
So
can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. It was a very good friend of mine and myself, and we went to Casadega, Florida. And if you ever have heard of Lilydale, New York, it's a huge spiritual camp of mediums. Well, this is its sister spiritualist camp in Florida. So we went down and stayed at the hotel there. And the first thing, and everybody, if you know about mirrors, they're kind of portals. So the first thing that kind of caught my attention was the hallways were lined in mirrors. I mean, I was just like portal, portal, portal going down the hallway. And
Jeez.
When we got there, it kind of struck us funny, because they kept saying, you're staying for 2 nights. I guess this stuff doesn't bother you. And I'm like, well, what stuff? We're just checking in.
You had no idea.
No. And so we checked in. Well, nobody stays there at night, apparently. Like, there's nobody at the front desk. There might be somebody that stays in one of the rooms, but I don't know how you get in touch with them. But there's certainly nobody at the front desk. And it must have been about 2:30 in the morning on the night before we were getting ready to leave. And it sounded like they were doing construction in the hallway. Like, it was like an episode of Rose Red. Like, I thought I was going to open the door and see like rooms being created or something. It was so much banging. And I sat up and I was like, okay, we'll leave, but not until morning. You got to stop. I'll leave in the morning. I'm not leaving at 2:30, at night. And we heard a few more bangs and, just, they weren't doing construction at night. First of all, there was nobody in the hotel,
Freaking crazy.
That frequently happens. And a lot of people, when their gifts start opening, they will get woke up. It's easy for spirit to communicate when you're in that twilight or that sleep area. So a lot of people will notice that they get woke up, and sometimes that can be startling. But that is a common time for spirits to want to communicate.
I remember, and I was traveling with Mama Star, and we were in, I think I want to say it was in Ohio. We stayed at this hotel. And I remember waking up at 3:00 in the morning, and it was this woman in a white dress that was standing over her bed. So I kind of looked, And then I turned and I wanted her to disappear. I kept thinking, oh, she's going to disappear. And then she started moving my way, and I did like the little kid thing. I just pulled the blanket up, like, okay, if I don't look at you, you're not here. But when I woke up that next morning, Mama Star was like, you had a woman standing over your bed looking at you. And I was like, yeah, but she was looking at you first.
So I left her with you.
Exactly. So you're right. It happens a lot because my sister's a flight attendant and she experiences it in a lot of different hotels.
Absolutely. And, I'll tell you, I have been communicating with spirits for, like I said, for most of my life. And even sometimes now, there was a couple months ago, I went out into my driveway early in the morning before the sun was up. I was going into work very early and turned, and there was a man standing there. And I knew, it was a spirit, but that startled me too. When we don't expect something there, I mean, just the human part of it startles.
Right.
I can hear voices all day long and I'll be fine. But, you turn around and you see something you're not expecting there. It's the spirits don't bother me, but it's the startle that there could be a live person standing there.
Exactly.
Right.
How do you deal for people who are experiencing this? Because I remember when my vision first opened up, I saw a hand over my face, and it was just a hand. There was no other body, and it freaked me out so bad because I kept thinking, where is the rest of him?
So, it takes a lot of energy for them to manifest, a lot of energy. And that's why electronics get affected and you'll see lights flickering. And, it takes a lot for them to manifest. So sometimes all of them don't come through, or it doesn't come through really clear. Just being a hand, I'm sure, could be startling. But that took a lot of energy. And chances are that hand was reaching out not to do harm, but maybe to stroke your cheek, to tap you, to get your attention. Most of the time, I do not turn, my head and, deny that they're not bad in the world. But most of the time, it is a loving spirit. It's an ancestor. It is somebody who's reaching out for our comfort most of the time.
Exactly. I think I had a reading 3 years afterwards, and the medium said that it was an ancestor and he was anointing my head.
Right.
So when I saw this hand coming over my face, it freaked me out because I had no idea.
Well, that's the horror movies. That's what they teach you. That's the effects that they have is the hand that comes out that's attacking you in, the night. It's the same as, and Sherwin had mentioned on the introduction, I'm an avid collector of Ouija boards, and I've used Ouija boards my whole life. So, but TV has painted them as really, really bad. But if you use them responsibly, they're a good tool. So just a lot of things have taught us to be fearful of some of these things that are actually really beautiful.
What would you suggest to someone who say they have a spirit in their house and they are afraid? How would you suggest they deal with that?
Talk to them. It really is that simple. Talk to them. Most of the time, it is an ancestor. Most of the time, they're just, so I'll tell you a little story. I like to sit and I like to interview spirits. I like to find out what it's like on the other side. I like to sit, I don't need to know who they are. I just call upon whoever wants to come and talk to me. And the one time I was asking them, because somebody kept telling me about, well, this spirit pushes me or that spirit pushes me. And I'm like, I just don't get the sense that they're bad, they were bad spirits. So I said to them, why do you push people? What would be a reason that you would push people in their house, or you'd scratch them or whatever? Well, they gave me a vision where I was dead and I was on the other side and I was in my daughter's house and she was crying and, and I was trying to say, I'm here. I'm not gone. I'm right here. I'm right here. But she couldn't hear me. She wasn't listening. And I got so frustrated, I started pushing things off the counter. And I went, oh. So they get that frustration too when they're trying to reach out and we're not hearing them, especially when we need them and we're not listening. So talk to them, but then honestly listen. Watch for the response, whether whatever clair or sense that you might receive that. And you kind of need to know yourself to know what your strongest is. Do you get a smell? Do you get a taste? Do you just get a knowing? Did you hear something? Because they're answering, so that's Absolutely. The first step. Because when you find out that they're not scary, that takes that fear away. And then if it is something that continues even after you've asked it to stop, like, I did a house cleansing for a woman, and I found a couple very wonderful spirits that were in the house that were amazing to communicate with. And when I told her, she's like, that's your world, not mine. I don't want them here. Come get them. Well, first of all, I can't make them leave. But, they were two that I went and said, hey, if you want to come with me, come on with me, but they weren't bad spirits, and you can't just make a spirit leave just because, you don't want them there. But once you find out, that they're not bad, then you can learn to live with them, or you can ask them not to show themselves. And most of the time, I've not met many spirits that are not respectful. Now, if you continue to have an issue and they become more of the not nice kind, that's when you'd reach out to one of us, Sherwin, yourself, or somebody, and, we might have to, help them decide to leave. But for the most part, they're usually very respectful.
I think so too. I think the fear for a lot of people is I want to connect with the ancestors. I want to open my gift, but I'm afraid. And I tell people a lot of time, the spirits that you encounter, the majority are ancestors. They're people who are trying to come through for you.
Absolutely. And my belief is that everybody can connect, that everybody has psychic and mediumship abilities. It's just how much do you want to work at it to open it up, and how much time do you want to devote to it, and how much confidence do you have in yourself and in spirit, because it's surrendering to spirit and trusting spirit. And you have to be able to do that. You also have to have a very good faith in whatever your background is. I mean, I personally follow an Egyptian path, but, I call upon my certain deities and stuff, but I have every strength in my faith in my ancestors and in my deities that they would not let something come through and harm me when I open up to spirit. So when you have that type of faith, there's not a time that I'm afraid of opening up and letting them. But I can imagine it would be fearful if you don't have that foundation. So for somebody starting out, I usually suggest for them to at least call upon a spirit guide and develop a personal relationship with a guide, or whatever your path is, and develop that relationship first. Because once you have that basis and you have that that knowledge of having that that protection behind you, there's nothing else that can get to you.
True. Maybe when you get a chance, can you let Voodoo in? Sherwin, you got questions? Because I know we got like 50, 63.
Yeah. We got a lot. Let me scroll up some. Let's see.
Because I saw it. It was like the numbers just kept going. And I was like, oh, yeah, they're going to ask questions.
Let's see.
What's the best way, Ruth, while he's scrolling, to strengthen your mediumship?
Practice. I do an exercise when I teach mediumship classes that is really kind of powerful, that everybody could easily do. And basically where you go almost like you were doing a meditation and just relax and call a familiar spirit. I always suggest to start out, especially because it is a trust issue, with a spirit that you are comfortable. So a past loved one, an ancestor, somebody, and you will recognize, the same as you said that there was somebody standing in your room that somebody saw, but you could feel that they were there. We recognize our ancestors' energies. We are energy at our soul, at our essence. That's what we are, as energy. So we recognize that. The same as like if somebody were to walk in, if I were to walk in the room behind Sherwin, he'd probably be like, "Hey, Ruth," without even turning around, because you recognize the energy. So call that spirit in and let them come as close to you. It's called blending, the energies, blending your auras, and let that spirit come as close to you as you can. And you'll start getting flooded with memories from them, hearing, words from them. It takes a little bit of practice, but then what you can do eventually is you start connecting with spirits and just building your vocabulary, letting them show you what the sign for certain things are going to be. Because everything's signs and smells or visions. And the more you practice, and then find people. I mean, there's never a lack of people who want somebody to practice a reading.
True.
So find people. And then the biggest thing is trust yourself. The information you're getting is correct. The person receiving it might have forgotten things. Spirit doesn't forget.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have that confidence and trust. And it's just practice, practice, and practice, and want it. You know,
It's
you
true.
have to want it.
I was telling some friends the other night that I was walking out the restroom and I walked through the spirit. I knew immediately when I did it, I felt something change, and I automatically said, "Excuse me," and then I looked, and it was like, "Okay, who are you saying excuse me to?" But I felt when I went through the energy, and that was the first time that's ever happened to me. So it was a little weird.
Yes. And it gets, you know, it can sometimes be kind of comical. I was assisting friends with planning a funeral. So, you know, I was there at the funeral home with them, and I had, and they don't know this part of me, that's not something that they do. And my friend was standing behind me, who, you know, they couldn't see. And he kept giving me information to give to his wife about his planning of his funeral. And I kept looking to the side, and I'm like, now, how do you think I'm supposed to just work that into a conversation? Like, you know,
Right.
so I'm having this own little battle back and forth, you know, that was pretty comical, you know. And then finally I just walked up to her and said, look, I have to ask you, if so-and-so was standing right here, would he really want that? And she's like, oh my goodness, no, he wouldn't. And I'm like, yeah, you know. So I'm like, okay, are you happy now? So sometimes, like, it's like I'm battling with somebody can't see, but I don't care about looking crazy anymore.
You got to pass the messages on. That's what you do. And if you can hear it, you got to pass the messages on. So Sherwin, some questions.
Some of them were reading questions, but you know we're not doing readings tonight. Sorry, guys, but let's see here.
But you can go to Mediumship by Ruth, and I'll be happy to get back.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I see a question that somebody wants to know if a person is nasty in this physical life, are they the same way when they cross over?
So not in my experience. When they come to me during a reading, when I connect with them, they will show me what their personality was like when they were here. And my belief is, and from what I've asked spirits, they do that because if you knew them to be not a particularly nice person in life, and I say, oh, what a wonderful gentleman, such a beautiful energy, you'd be like, oh, no, wrong person. So they give me validating energy, validating information that I have. I'm big on validation. That's my big thing. I want you to 100% know I have your person before I go on to messages. So I spend a lot of time with them doing validations. So they'll give me a lot. Like I mean, mediumship is not always, you have to be non-judgmental, and you have to be willing to give and not interpret it. And you can't be afraid to not say what Spirit's giving you. So, I mean, I've had people who are users of people who have, you know, really done some not nice things in life, but you have to give that validation so that they know you have the person. However, once you validate that, they switch. They have the big picture. They've released all of that. And it's really for healing purposes after that. There's a lot of apologies, a lot of tears, a lot of growth, I'm sure, for both sides, for the spirit as well as for the sitter who's, you know, getting the reading at that time. So no, I do not believe that personality continues when they leave here, but yes, they do show that personality to validate who they are.
I think sometimes even in readings, when I do mediumship readings, the person on the other side is always apologizing. And I think it's because they see things differently now that they're not here. What do you feel about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They have the big picture. They realize, I mean, I've had many people who have come through and said, you know, I'm so sorry for lots of different things, for abuse issues, for you know, ending a relationship because they didn't believe in, like, you know, their relationship choices, or you know, there's just so many things. It's so much easier to make amends when you're both in a physical body here on earth, but it doesn't always happen. So fortunately, we're able to have, you know, people who can help and assist in bridging those differences after somebody is not here, and you don't have to continue you know, carrying those those hurts. You can do it. It's easier to fix them. I always tell people it's easier to fix your problems when you're here and not carry them with you in this lifetime, but we can fix it if you have to.
Absolutely. I've had a few people that have had people that have crossed over and they're having a hard time letting them go. I still have some people that, they may have lost a loved one, 3 years, 5 years ago. And I mean, we know that there's no time limit on grief. Absolutely not. But what do you suggest for people who, for me and for us, it's easy because we know that there's no end.
Absolutely. So that is, that's the way I look at it. As I have such a concrete belief in what there is after here, that to me, a lot of cultures, we celebrate when a baby's born and we mourn when someone dies. I think we should be celebrating when somebody dies because they return back to their true home. So it's hard for, not that I don't miss somebody when they pass. I don't mean it like that, but I kind of think our culture, we have it backwards there a little bit, but I think that you give people the time to heal. Me as a medium, I will see people. I have read for people immediately when somebody passes. I don't feel that there has to be a time frame before you can get that healing. I have read for people before a funeral has even occurred and connected. But what I do watch for is people who come back constantly, who are having a problem with that grief, who it's who want to connect all the time, people who are trying to come like every week or every month, or because at a certain point they have to be able to live their life here still, with being able to separate a little bit. So I'll watch and be like, why don't we do this on the anniversary of his passing or on his birthday, and have them pick one instead of becoming dependent upon connecting through a medium.
Yeah, you see it a lot. And I think it's because people, they're not ready. They're not ready to let go.
Right. And it's that comfort. But what people, you really can connect to that loved one yourself. You don't need to go to a medium all the time. And a lot of times, like, we don't get, like, they're released of that worldly stuff. So they're not going to tell you how to manage your checkbook or whether you should buy that car. Like, they're not the messages that they're connected to anymore. They're sending love. Well, you can sit and call that relative near you and just bring them into your energy and almost feel like a hug from them and connect to them that way, instead of needing to, connect through a medium constantly.
Absolutely. I agree. I tell people a lot of times you just get this energy that it just takes over. Absolutely. And a lot of times it's just emotional. It's like you said, it's almost like a hug because they're letting you know that they're still there. A lot of times my grandmother passed when I was 16. When she comes around, I still get that same feeling.
Right.
So I know it's her.
And I'll frequently, my grandmother has been passed since 2000, or actually 1999. And there's a lot of times it'll pop in my head, oh, you need to go call my mom. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And that's her. When those random thoughts just pop in your head about somebody that you're not thinking about, that's them planting them, saying, hey, thinking about you. And truly, that's most of the time what they're doing, especially if it's in a time that you're going through a difficult time, or you're, just need a little extra love or something that day. They pop in to let you know they're there.
Sherwin, questions? Because I don't want to hog Ruth, but I will.
Who, me? Oh, do I have any questions?
Yeah. Do people have questions? Because
there's a lot of questions on their end. I'm just trying to go through them and see. Let's see. Takia Zachary asks, what are your thoughts on schizophrenic people? Are they hearing spirits, seeing spirits, and they just don't know how to handle it, or are they mentally struggling, and the result is what they go through?
I believe that most people are wrongly, and I'm not a doctor, so I'll put that out there. I'm not suggesting anybody go off of any medication or stop seeing any doctors, but my belief is that most of the time they're misunderstood, that they don't know how to channel what is going on, and
absolutely,
that they are over medicated. I believe that children are huge with being over medicated because we're a much more open society now, and children, you know, are very open. They're very sensitive. And so, yes, I believe that they are often misdiagnosed. However, there is a time and a place. I'm in the medical field, so there's a time and a place that medicine does come in if they can't get that gift under control. But I think many people have been medicated, even hospitalized, just because they were seeing and hearing spirit and didn't exactly know how to handle it.
It's so true. I remember visiting a friend one time in a facility, and she had a breakdown. And while I was waiting for her to come out of a class, a lady was sitting next to me, and she was like, "There's a woman that sits on my bed, and she will not leave. And every time I tell the nurse, they won't do anything about her." So she said, "Can you come talk to her?" So I assumed it was a physical person. So I went into the room, and she was right. There was a spirit it was clear as day to me that was sitting on her bed. And I was like, "She doesn't like you sitting there. Can you move to the other bed?" And it worked.
Absolutely. I had a family who had called myself and a friend of mine out to their house. Their little girl was telling them that she was seeing spirits. She was very afraid to be in certain rooms. And we went out, and I was able to see what she was seeing. And together we were able to ask those spirits to leave. Well, you heard, well, first of all, the animals are so sensitive. You know, the animals, you know, they perked up. They watched as we were telling these people they had to walk out the front door. And then you heard the door latch go. And the family was just like, "What just happened?" And I said, "She is seeing things." And she just needed to know that even at that young age, that she was empowered to be in control and have who she wanted there and who she didn't want leave. And that her telling them to leave and watching them leave, it changed. I mean, completely changed. And then with kids, what I usually do is tell them to make sure that they keep their room spirit free, so that they have one place that they know is theirs, that they're in control of, and that they can go without being bothered. But children often get medicated, or will, you know, get hospitalized or given diagnoses, just because they're open and they're seeing spirits. Most kids who say they have an invisible friend from years ago, they were playing with spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So that was a great question.
It was. Any more questions?
Let's see here. Someone asked, "How I would like to know how can I connect with spirit, because I have a lot of people I'd like to connect with."
So connecting with spirit is really as simple as talking to them and then being mindful for the response, listening for the response. Again, you know, we talk a lot about our clairs or our senses. You know, do you hear? Do you see? Do you taste? Do you just know? So you kind of need to know yourself and in which way you're going to receive a message. But I have found that spirit, when they want to get a message across, are really ingenious. There are times that I'll ask a question and I'm like, okay. And then I'll open my Facebook and it'll be the first quote, or it'll be a picture. So they even use social media. They keep up with the times. They love to give messages in songs. All of a sudden you turn your radio on and there'll be a song. They get the messages. It's whether or not you accept that the message was from them. So many people are like, "Nah, that was just a coincidence." And then they'll give you another message. "Nah, it was just a coincidence." If you ask the question, you have to be willing to accept the answer. So be present and look for the answer. If you want to learn to develop your mediumship more, you can look for a local class or local medium who's, you know, taking on, you know, students who can mentor you to do that. Or you can do exercises yourself. You can, you know, Google, YouTube, whatever, and look for different practice exercises that you can do to help build your, you know, you have to be able to raise your energy, and that takes a little bit of practice. You know, like I said, I believe everybody has mediumship and psychic abilities. Psychic is reading the person that's right there. So not as much energy that you have to exert. You got to get it past that and get all the way up to be able to, you know, spirit can only lower theirs so much. You got to raise yours to match theirs. It's like tuning a radio. And you got to tune into that frequency to get it. But if you practice enough, you'll get there.
Absolutely. All right, more questions, Sherwin?
Let's see. No, I don't see none yet.
You know, it's so funny that you said it about music because about 4 years ago, every time I would get in a car, this song would come on. Somewhere down the road, it would come on, and I was so slow, I didn't catch on for a while. And I remember thinking, one day I was in a car with a friend listening to a completely different radio station, and the song came on, and that's what made me click because I was like, that song would not be playing on that radio station. As soon as I Googled the lyrics, it was a message with everything that was going on for me, and then it stopped. I never heard it again.
When we were down, I was down in New Orleans actually with Sherwin, and I love to go to the cemeteries. And I was in this one particular cemetery, and my song just came on, my radio on my phone just came on, and it was a song, and I'm like, and I just started listening and was getting guided to a particular gravesite, and went to that site, and it was a young girl. She was actually sharing a site with, I believe it was a grandfather or great grandfather, but it was a young girl, and she was just very playful. So there was a dollar store or something right there. So I went and got like a pinwheel for on there and stuff. And it was wonderful to watch because there was no wind whatsoever. Yet I put this pinwheel on and it took off. It was just going and going. And then when we went to leave the cemetery, my radio came back on to one of my playlists, and it was a song called Remembrance. And it was just so fitting. It was almost like a thank you from her for listening and coming. So, I will do a lot of things like that, exercises like that, where I don't, I'm not out to prove anything. Like, so I don't, I just go and connect with spirits and just talk with them, even if I don't know who they are. I just love to get their stories and listen to them.
That's beautiful, though. It really is, because the connection is they want somebody to talk to.
Right.
They want somebody to hear the story.
And when my gifts first started opening up, and I was really embracing them, and I had gone to a mentor and stuff, I went down to a cemetery, and I'm like, I'm going to go and connect with all these people and everything. And I'm walking and walking. Well, they don't hang at the cemetery. You call them back to the cemetery when you go to their resting place. But I'm going and going. And finally, one person, reached out, and I was like, yes. And I'm like, how can I help you? And they're like, you were looking for somebody to talk to. I was like, okay, yes, lesson learned.
It's true. It's true. I had a client a long time ago, bless her heart. And I kept telling her, you're a natural medium, you're a natural medium. She ended up going on a road trip with her husband to Austin, Texas, and they stopped by this beautiful cemetery. And she kept saying she heard kids giggling. So what she did was she reached in her purse and she laid candy out. And she goes, if you want to come home with me, you're more than welcome to come home with me. Well, they drove back. And the next night, her husband goes, there's cabinets open in the kitchen. The front door open by itself. I'm going to a hotel. I don't know what happened, but I'm leaving. And it was the kids.
House, wasn't it, Sherwin?
Yes. So she brought them in. So let me ask you the question between spirits following you home and attachment. Would that be the same thing?
So in my case, for most of the time, I have not. I'm very careful as far as attachment. Attachment to me is a little bit more of a dark thing usually, and I'm very careful about that. And again, there's protections and stuff that following me home, I invite so many of them that I don't know that I can never blame somebody that they followed me because I invite them all. But again, attachment, I'm very much in follow a routine and a ritual of what I do to make sure that I cut and sever any, ties or attachments or cords or whatever you'd like to say. If I'm doing some type of an investigation or I'm helping somebody, clear a house or something like that, or clear land, or so I don't worry too much about that.
Okay.
If that answered it.
No, it did, because I think sometimes people get it confused, and I agree with you. I think attachments seem to be of a darker energy, because you're not inviting them. They tend to jump from people to people, and I think they can be very draining.
Correct.
But I think a lot of times when you do have people who are curious, because I want to ask you too, why do you invite them to come home with you?
So it's usually the ones that people say, I don't want them here, and they've been, so I'm like, oh, well, you're always welcome to come here with me if you want. They don't take up much room. They're, I love having spirit around. I'm never alone. And when I say I invite them to come here, I don't want people to think anybody's ever trapped or that you take somebody's loved one home with them.
Right.
They are free to go where they want. So it's kind of a routine joke with me and the group of people that I do things with. They're like, oh, are you going to take more home with you? So it's just, me personally hate for any spirit to feel unwanted someplace. So I'm always like, well, you're welcome at my house.
You have a beautiful heart, because there are some that are out there that they need that. They need that connection. So that's beautiful that you can offer that. Now, let me ask you, a lot of times, and I've had friends that worked with tranquil spirits, where you have spirits that are just kind of lost, or they've been summoned, or they've done work and people have forgot to call them back in or forgot to release them. Do you come across those in your work when you're dealing with mediumship?
I have come across some, and I usually, and I hate to say, you pass them over, like help them pass over or whatever. Usually it's a matter of just reminding them that they don't have to stay here, that their work is done, that they have the choice to be able to leave. Again, I don't believe that I can force somebody who's, of the right intention and just wants to, you see people who, a long time ago, owning land and owning a house and owning whatever was like everything to them. And they don't want to leave those properties. They don't want to leave that land, but I don't feel they're stuck. It's the choice that they make to want to stay there. But I'll talk to them and I'll let them know. And, and sometimes people will say, oh, okay, so you don't need me here anymore? No, it's good. You can go ahead, go to the other side. And then I don't see them ever again, at least that's been my experience, and other people might have different experiences, but I think sometimes they, time is man-made. We have time. They don't have time. So it might seem like 10 minutes to them that they've been sitting there waiting to be let go, and it's been 100 years, So sometimes reminding them that, okay, thank you. You served, you did what you needed to do, and we appreciate it.
And now you can go.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Sherwin, questions?
Is it possible to feel someone's spirit coming to you before they transition?
Absolutely. I think a lot of patients who have dementia, Alzheimer's, people who are in comas, are able to communicate, are able to come to you while they're still, they spend more time out of their bodies in those states than they do in their bodies. They start transitioning out, and it's absolutely possible for them to come and speak to you. The same it is for animals to speak to you, even when they're not transitioning, just because they're so pure and their spirits, they don't have those restrictions that their minds have put on them. They can't do it. If we believed we could too, but we just have been conditioned not to. But yes, when you forget those conditions, and I also believe that patients that are in psychiatric hospitals and stuff and highly medicated and stuff are able to reach out to you telepathically as well.
Right. Let's see here. There's so many questions.
And twins have that connection. You see that a lot with twins, where they just will automatically know when the other one needs them. And that's not a transition thing, but they just, the mind is very powerful. We just don't use it.
True. I agree.
So give us a story where I know you've done a lot with your gifts. Give us a story where I think you said you helped with investigations.
So, right. So I will go out. So recently, I'll give you one that was just about a month ago. There were two people, homeowners, they just bad luck after bad luck after bad luck. And they said that neighbors had told them that there was this tree in the backyard was called the Devil's Tree, and they cut it down, and they had all this bad luck. And a lot of times you'll see activity pick up when you are renovating a house, or when you're doing something to the land. You'll see energies start kicking up. So what we do is we'll go out and we'll do an initial interview and check out what we're dealing with, and then come up with a plan of how we're going to work with that. This particular one, there was a not so nice entity, spirit, whatever you want to call it, that was in the yard. There was some spirits that were in the house, but they seemed to be more protecting, and that's what you have to look at. They were actually keeping the things that should be out, the not nice things. They were actually preventing them from coming in the house. So they were concerned about wanting me to get rid of the things in the house, when the things in the house were actually providing protection for them. So we were able to research, figure out what was there, go out, and we actually have on video, on film, you can watch what was out there responding, and actually being contained and sent away. And then the beautiful part was receiving, immediately afterwards in the house, the animals he had some cats, and the one cat would not come out of one room. The minute this was done, that cat was running around the house, jumping up and down, purring, sitting on our laps, licking us, like so thankful they had their house back.
Yeah.
And then we got a letter. He actually posted the whole thing on his Facebook page, about just how everything just lightened, and how taking their house back. And we didn't realize at the time he was videoing it, but it was pretty neat to get the video afterwards, and actually be able to watch what we were doing, and to watch the response.
Wow. That's amazing. I think too, like you said, even catch it on video would be wild. There is a question, I think it comes from Lisa, where she was saying that her aunt passed, and she wakes up at night frantic. She wants to know, how do you calm yourself down?
So she wakes up frantic because of grief, or frantic because she's contacting, or what is she?
Let me see, because it was sent to me, so I don't have the full question. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay.
It could be that she wakes up emotional.
Right. If she's waking up overly emotional, it could be that she is feeling her energy, that she's trying to come to her. This is at least what I'm sensing. So I don't know if it answers her question, but this is what I'm getting. That her, you said grandmother, was it?
Her aunt.
Her aunt. Okay. I've got a grandmother. I don't know if her grandmother's here or not, but there's a grandmother talking to me. Anyway, what she's experiencing is, which can be taken as anxiety, is her coming so close to her with her energy, trying to make contact with her, that she's almost feeling that she's having an anxiety attack. If she takes a deep breath and just keeps her eyes closed and says, I'm listening, listen for the message. She's reacting to the energy.
She's telling me that the aunt is coming through frantic. So she's having a dream that the aunt, or a visitation that the aunt is coming through frantic.
I'm still getting the sense that I think that it's a little bit of anxiety for her, that she's thinking that she's coming through frantic. If she is getting anything frantic from the aunt, I think it's that it would be that she's frantically trying to get a message to her. Typically they don't come through very, other than frustrated, like I was explaining before, because they're trying to get you to listen. So I would treat it the same way as you would treat anybody who is frantic in life. What would you say to them? Calm down. Okay, I'm listening to you. And have a conversation. There is no death. It's just a transition of body. So talk to them the same as you would talk to them if they were here, and ask her what if she is frantic, what do you need me to do for you? And typically those things that might make them seem a little bit more frantic are things like somebody who's really having a hard time, and they want you to go be the messenger. I need you to reach out to this person, or I need you to reach out to this person. Let this person know I'm okay. They're usually the big things. So she could be trying to get her to be a messenger.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Because a lot of times when people will come for a reading, they'll take that opportunity of you sitting there to give you messages that need to be, you know, to go to somebody else. And I always tell everybody, if you know that the person's open to the message, then please deliver the message. If you think that delivering the message would make things worse because it's not a belief of theirs, then just wait and let Spirit give the opportunity for the message to be delivered, because they can make things happen. We can't.
True.
If they want that message delivered, they'll make a way. And, you know, when I have transient spirits that will come through that'll give me a message, I'm like, you'll have to know. You've got to bring that person across my path for me to give this message to. I'll remember your message and I'll keep trying to place it, but you got to make this person show up, because I don't know who to give it to.
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend, and she's on here, that had a message for somebody, and she literally had to find this person on Facebook and cold call this person and say, look, I have this message. You need to be careful with this. And that's always awkward. It's always, because it's happened to me a couple of times. And it's like, how do you even approach someone like that?
It is awkward, but I trust that Spirit, again, it comes back to that trust word. You have to trust in Spirit, and that they're not going to lead you, to somebody who's not going to want to hear it. I have had people that have said to me, oh, you know, I don't believe in that. I don't want to hear that, or whatever. And I'll tell you, most of the time they turn back around and I hear from them within a couple of days saying, maybe I should have taken that message. What were you going to tell me? You know? So I think it at least opens the door. But I just take the clue from Spirit, and just like I did with, you know, helping my friend's family at the funeral home, sometimes I'll give the message in a way that I'm not actually saying that it's coming from them. I'll just put it in words that their loved one would have used and make them think about it. And it still puts that in their mind, and they still get the message.
Yeah, sometimes you have to get creative. You definitely have to get creative.
Exactly.
All right, Sherwin, questions?
Let's see here. How do you differentiate your thoughts from spirit messages?
So and this is a safe place to say I hear voices. You know your voice, you know your inner voice and what you sound like, you know what your thoughts sound like. I hear them in the voices that they spoke. So I hear different voices, the same as I would be able to tell Sherwin's voice or Tanya's voice, or, you know, I hear the different voices. So for me, and it's very different from deities that I work with. It's very different from guides that I work with. So for me, fortunately, I do hear the different voices and their different accents. And so I know it's not my voice.
Yeah, I think you guys be patient with it, because when I first started hearing, it literally was like me talking to myself. That's the way I felt. And then after that, I agree with Ruth. There's certain times where something will say something, and I'll be like, okay, that's not even the way I talk.
Right.
That's not even, you know, it's urgent, or it has some type of twang or accent to it. So now I'm starting to realize, okay, I'm separating it. So you're absolutely right.
And then I had, it was a practice session, but I was doing a session in channeling just a couple weeks ago. And if you're doing any type of channeling, you always have somebody else there with you, because not that it's dangerous to channel on your own, but you can lose track of time. And there's nobody there to ask questions or to write down what the responses are, and you don't always remember everything. But I was doing channeling where I actually started speaking in German. So, and I don't speak German. So, you know, it was, so they were kind of like, we're not really sure what you were saying, but it definitely was German. You know, so
wow.
They do come through, and they do, usually I hear the different voices. So that's for me, how I know. Now, a lot of people just get a knowing of a response. And that's where I think we've all done that. We all channel that way. Sometimes you're talking to a friend, and all of a sudden you'll start giving advice, and you're like, how do I even know that? Like, where did that come from? You know, and that's just a knowing, just a channeling that we do sometimes. So it can be a little bit hard to tell in the beginning, but again, the more you practice, the easier it'll become.
True.
All right. Ebony Sanders Augusta asks, when will you be in New Orleans again?
I don't know, Sherwin, when we're going again.
I'm coming too. I just invited myself.
You can come. I don't know. We got to get some traveling out the way first. We got other things to do with Omaha coming up, and then we're planning this Fed and things of that nature. So, I guess I don't know. Ebony, you gonna have to add her, and then when she posts about it, you got to just contact her.
It would be a really great time while everything is slow there.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of, I think you could probably appreciate not being with the crowd. Sometimes it can be overwhelming for some people when they go to New Orleans and it's just full-fledged on. It depends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been down there when, there was a lot of crowds, and, for me, I kind of, that energy, in certain areas, it helps too. When I've read up in Salem and stuff, especially during the month of October, it's crazy, insane with readings, but that energy of everybody supporting everyone really helps too. And New Orleans just has an incredible energy to it. But there's also something said for it being a little bit quiet too. So I appreciate
this would be an amazing time to go if you really wanted to connect with some of the spirits and even some of the graveyards there that are absolutely beautiful without all the tours and everything going on right now.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we'll have to talk about that and see if we can come up with a date.
I'm for it. I'm ready. Yes. My suitcase stay packed all the time.
I'm always ready to travel. So,
so Sherwin, any more questions?
Mitchell, Dara, do spirits come to you as you remember them with everyone, or different with each person?
Do spirits come as you remember them? So spirits, to me, typically, like I said, I like to do a lot with validation. So they will come to me as the person would remember them in the lifetime that they are currently in. And I say that because I'm a big believer in past lives and many lives here. So sometimes, I'll speak to a spirit and they'll show me multiple lives that they've had, but that won't do somebody any good as far as to validate them if I tell you about something that they did in the 1800s. So they will come to me and they will show me as they were in the lifetime with that person, with the sitter that I'm giving the reading to at that time. Then sometimes they'll switch and give me different information about things. But yeah, for me, they will always validate the lifetime that they shared with the person who's there for the reading.
Okay.
Let's see here. Takia Zachary asks, is being a medium something that you can practice and work on to become one, or is it a gift that only certain people have?
I believe that everybody can. I believe that we're all born with it. It's just whether or not, some people are really, really good athletes and they don't have to work hard at it all. But, if you really want to play that sport, you can play that sport. You may not be the Long Island medium up on stage, but you know what? That's not what I strive to be. I like my place where I am, and that we're all meant to do different, different levels and at different places, and we all help. So I absolutely believe you can work at it. And if that's what, that you have that within you, it's just a matter of practicing it. And you might be surprised when you open it up, it might come to you more naturally than you think.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's see here.
Also, past lives play a little bit of, in my opinion, play a little bit into that. If you had a past life where you were, maybe, tormented or looked down upon or whatever for having those gifts, you might come into this lifetime with them a little bit more locked and a little bit more fearful to use them. So there's sometimes even doing some past life regression, if you're having a really hard time unlocking them, can be helpful to find out what that block is, like why, or maybe at a past lifetime you misuse them or use them for not, healing purposes, or, and therefore this time you're kind of blocked. So there could be different reasons, but I believe that everybody has those abilities.
Let's see here. Janice Chink's calendar. How do you stop being scared of being contacted?
How do you stop being scared? You have to want the gifts and the mediumship more than the fear, if that makes sense. It has to be something that you want enough to keep challenging yourself. I'm the type of person that if something fears me, if I'm afraid of it, I run towards it. Like I have to clear that part of me. You know, I wasn't always that way. But so for me, I'd want to stand up against it more, but it's making that contact. It's feeling, you know, when you really make that initial contact with spirit and you feel that unconditional love there, you just want to bask in that all day. You don't even want to leave. You just want to stay in that. And that's why I said, like, when I do meditations or I'm channeling, if I'm by myself, I need to set a clock, an alarm, because if not, you might think you're 20 minutes and it's been 3 hours and you're still sitting there. It's, you know, you don't want to come back from that realm when you do it. So then you start realizing there's really nothing to fear about that. So it's really wanting it and then working for it. And then the fear will disappear. And having a strong belief in whatever it is that you have behind you, whether it's, a deity, whether it's God, whether it's, spirit, whether it's spirit guides, whatever you hold on to, having that belief that they have your back. Your ancestors are always there. So if you know that you're calling upon them, that's why I suggest starting with an ancestor, because there's no fear with an ancestor.
It's true. If the foundation is set, you really don't have anything to be afraid of. And you're right. When you make a connection with spirit, time, it literally, you get addicted to the energy. You really get addicted to the energy.
You do. And early on, there was a couple times that I would go to do a reading and I'd like wake up and I'd feel off. Like I'd be like, I have a head cold, or, this was pre-COVID, or, I have a headache, or I have, whatever, maybe I should cancel. And then I'd always hear no go. And then as soon as I connect with spirit, they take all those symptoms away. And I would leave there feeling, now my cold might come back the next day, but for that day, I mean, they would take away everything. So it is just such a loving, not fearful experience that if you just experience that, the fear would really go away.
I agree. Any more questions?
Let's see here. I just seen it. Lord, now I got to find it.
You getting old, man. Getting old.
No, it's just all the questions coming in fast, and it done scoot the question up. Well, I remember her name. I think it's Ciaria Moss.
Let me see if I can find it.
Sorry if I chop your name up, but she asked, how did you handle when your mediumship gifts first opened up?
So I can remember from very early age seeing spirit, but they didn't open up. As a child, I didn't embrace them. I did have a open heart surgery where I was put on heart-lung bypass. And it was after that time that I think just spending, a little bit of time probably on the other side there a little bit, that they really opened up. And then it was a passing, although I didn't do it professionally, I didn't own it, I didn't, but it was a passing of a very good friend's husband. And he came to me immediately upon passing, and he was relentless. It would have made a wonderful comedy show, watching me and him battle for about 30 days before I owned up to his family that I was giving him the messages that he was giving. And then the next day in Facebook was an ad for a mediumship class. And I called and they were full. And then she called me back in an hour and said, somebody just dropped out. Do you still want to come? And I thought, okay, well, obviously I'm meant to be there. And then that kind of started along the course. As a child, I think I probably was fearful. I can remember a couple early times when I saw spirit and I, did the typical, in the bed, covers over your head, afraid. And I didn't really have anybody back at that time that would have understood or to talk to about it. I was raised by my grandparents, and ghosts and stuff weren't something that they, we're into. So, so it was a little bit later, but I believe that your gifts open when they're supposed to open too. I mean, even though I had to work at them a little bit to get them to open up, it still was a wonderful experience, and I'm glad that I did it. So I hope that answers it. I was never super fearful of it though. It kind of, but I also just kind of took them as they came naturally.
I think you have to. And like you say, I tell people all the time, spirit opens them up when you're ready.
Correct.
It happens that way. Now, somebody put a question about sex with spirits, sexual visitations, or spirits that come in and crawl into bed with you. What are your thoughts?
Well, if it's agreeable, I think it has to be agreeable, the same as it does in the physical world. But I'm going to tell you that it is actually a real thing. It absolutely can occur. It can be wonderful. But again, there's that trust word, and as long as you are open to it, then it can be an absolutely wonderful, incredible experience. If it is not something that you want, then you absolutely have the right to say no, even though it's a spirit.
Absolutely. No means no.
The biggest thing is people have to understand is that you are in control. You can, just the same as if they were here in a body, you have, the right to tell them yes or no, and they do listen.
Well, see, with that also is they have the whole concept of incubus and succubus, but incubus and succubus was created by nuns and priests back then as an excuse for night emissions or wet dreams. They said that a spirit would come in there and make them ejaculate or have a sexual dream, when in actuality it was because of their celibacy and the suppression of their sexual energy.
Absolutely. And I think, probably at that point, there was a lot of them that were saying yes because of the wonderful experience that it can be. But then the guilt or needing to cover it up, they had to come up with a story. So a lot of things have been made bad that really are not. They're really just pure and not bad.
Absolutely. Ruth, some people want to know where you at. What city are you in?
I am in Summerville, South Carolina. So right outside of Charleston, South Carolina.
Now, do you have a website that people can contact you at?
I have a Facebook page, Mediumship by Ruth.
Okay.
Let's see here.
You getting them on your end? Let me see. I always have to close out to go see.
Sand Stewart asks, how can I get messages from the spirits that I feel?
So how you can get messages, again, you have to work. You have to kind of make an internal dictionary. So you will start getting symbols, signs, feelings, and they'll mean different things to you. What I try to do, and very fortunately, I mean, I see some, but I hear more. I just always tell the person that I'm sitting, what it is that I'm getting, and let them kind of interpret. Like, I know what it might mean to me, but it's really more important what it means to the person receiving the message, because I try not to mess it up. One time I had a spirit that kept showing me cowboy boots. And I'm like, I don't know what they mean. So I just said, he just keeps showing me cowboy boots. And she burst into tears, and it had a huge meaning for her. But when you're interpreting them for yourself, it's really what you feel you're getting. Be patient with yourself, listen, and be present. If you know that there's a spirit around you and you know they're trying to make contact with you, then just say to them, please show me. Please show me. But then you have to be present and look at things, and trust them. If it's, a bird that they send or a dragonfly that they send, that's, not normally, not if you're in a butterfly garden, but if they send you a butterfly and you're just out and it seems out of place, then that's a message that they're sending you. But you have to kind of be present and watch for those things. You can't just say, tell me the message, and then go on about your day and be oblivious to everything going around you, because you'll miss the answer.
So very true.
And we do. We walk around and we've got headphones in and we're on our phone and we've got, we make it harder for them. I mean, they do get ingenious, you know, they'll use Facebook, they'll use quotes, they'll use songs, they'll, you know, flicker lights, they'll turn TVs on and off, they'll, you know, whatever. But we have to give them the opportunity. We can't ask and then not listen.
True. I think a lot of people get caught up on a particular way that they think spirit is going to communicate with them. And they tend to kind of lock themselves in it. You know, I want to see the vision, or I want to hear, or I want this particular experience.
And we are all different. And I think it's just human nature to always want what somebody else has. You know, like I'll sit there and say, oh, I can't believe they can see all the time. And that must be awesome. And I really work at all my different clairs, because sometimes if I'm not receiving something clearly, I'll ask them to show me a different way. So I have to be open with all of my different clairs and senses. But really, you know, we're all made perfectly, and we're all given the gift that we're supposed to have. So, you know, I know that I hear, so that's how I'm going to receive. You know, somebody else is going to feel, but you know what? That's what makes us all whole and makes one, you know, when I go out with a group, there's 4 of us that go out on investigations and stuff. It's because we're all different that makes us work, because we each have some different type of skill or different way of receiving something, and that makes a whole. And that's how we are successful and get the big picture, is because we work together, but we're all different. So,
all right. So explain to them what are the different clairs.
So you will have clairvoyance, which is clairvision. You can have clairaudience, which is hearing, clairgustience, which is a taste. Some people will taste things. I've only had that happen a couple times. And actually they were a trauma patient that I had, and they had me tasting blood, and I was like, oh, I really don't like this, Claire. You can take that one away. You know, but you need all of them. You can have just a clear knowing. You can have just where when you ask a question, you will just immediately know the answer, or you'll feel the answer within you. So it's really important to know your body, know your clairs. Like when I do a mediumship class, I do a little exercise at the beginning where we do like taste testing blindfolded, and feeling things blindfolded, and listening to things while blindfolded, just to kind of get a very basic idea of which one of your clairs, because you'd be surprised. Like, and usually I do like the organic baby food, 1 ingredient baby food, and nobody can ever get what they are, hardly ever, you know. So it's just developing your senses and your clairs, and really paying attention to which one is your strongest.
Right.
But continue to always challenge yourself with all of them, because the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more clairs that you have available to you, the better you can deliver those messages with more details. Because, you know, I'll tell you, I don't know my flags. And sometimes somebody will show me like a flag from another country or something, and I'll be like, oh, I don't know what that is. You're going to have to tell me, or you're going to have to show me something else, or, you know.
Oh, Lord.
But if they're showing it, it's because it's an important part of the message. They wanted me to say that they were from that country, but I'm like, oh, okay. You know, I tell people all the time, I'm not all that smart. I just listen and repeat.
Right. So y'all, you know what that means? That means that everyone is gifted in some shape, form, or fashion. Everyone has a different gift.
Everybody does.
Not everyone is meant to see spirits. I get so many questions about that.
But, you know, the other thing is, you know, we think about psychic and empathic and mediumship, and they all kind of do tie together, but there's so many different ways that people can use things. You know, there's medical intuitives. There are people that, you know, work for medical offices and stuff that they're not, you know, their name tag might not say medical intuitive, but they go in and they work, you know, a doctor will say, I don't know what's wrong with them. Just go in and interview them and tell me what you get. Kind of go in and scan the person. You have psychics and mediums that work for police departments and helping with cases. You know, I know my profession was as a paramedic for over 20 years. I used my gifts all the time. There's many times that I went in to take care of a patient, and I would hear immediately, this is what's wrong. You need to hurry up, or, there's really nothing, and early on, I wasn't really aware that that's what I was doing. But then as I started listening and owning my gifts and stuff, I was like, oh, this is a pretty neat tool. And, it really does help. So there's so much that you can do, even if you don't want to be, a medium sitting there giving messages. Developing your psychic, your empathic, and your mediumship abilities just open so many doors in life that really help.
Mm-hmm. That's so true.
Let's see here. Someone wants to know about angelic mediumship.
Angelic mediumship?
Yeah.
So I know some people who don't like to connect direct with spirit. They'll only use guides, or they'll only work with angels, or, whatever it is that their choice is. For whatever reason, they're not comfortable going, direct to spirit. And I believe it is still a form of mediumship. When I very first started, when I would get a difficult reading, I had a hard time tuning in or on a particular spirit, I would call upon my guide and use them as a bridge. And it wasn't until in the middle of a reading where my guide kind of kicked me and said, nope, do your own work. And I was like, okay, got it. But I don't think there's anything wrong with using a bridge. And if you are comfortable and that's the realm, and you trust in the angels, if you're getting the messages correct and you're still giving the healing, then, there is some controversy, I will say. I've heard, controversy on both sides. I've heard some people say that that's not true mediumship because you're not connecting direct with the spirit. But I think if you're connecting with a higher source and you're providing that healing and you're still giving them the answers, I don't know that there's a rule book written that says that you can't count that as mediumship.
True.
Right. Let's see here. So, how do you think people should handle hauntings? Say a person just moved into a house and they found out that the house is haunted. How should they handle that situation in the beginning?
So I would go in with an open mind. Even if that house is, supposedly haunted, if it bothered, if you didn't know that it was haunted and you moved in and things started happening, keep an open mind, speak with them. I always try to cohabitate with everybody. So give them a chance to prove themselves. It could just be curiosity that they're coming out. And it also depends upon, if you're on the show and you're watching, I think you have an interest in working with spirit. And so I wouldn't be so quick to try to get rid of them unless they prove to be a problem. So really, honestly, just talking to them. Again, I don't believe that there is a death. There's just a change of, existence, just a transition of different realms that you're in. I like to tell people it's almost like, when you look through a fan and it's going really, really fast, you can see through it. You don't see the blades. It doesn't block it. If we could get our vibration that high, we would see that other side of that veil. We'd be walking side by side with them. So, it is easy as just treating them kindly, the same as we would want to, and acknowledging them. If they really become bothersome, then ask them to leave or ask them not to show themselves. And then if it truly becomes a haunting or something else, then seek somebody who's able to help you with that.
Right.
That's really good, because I think a lot of people experience it and they don't know how to deal with it. So you gave some really valid points, because people, they get afraid and they feel like that is, they can't do anything. Spirit is going to take over. And I think that's the fear.
Right. And it's not, you have control and you can set boundaries, you can even say, spirit, you're not permitted in my bedroom when, and I had said that early on, like, you're not allowed in here. Well, then they got kind of funny and they'd knock on the bedroom door. And then, I'd be getting up every night, opening the door to see if there was somebody at the door when I knew there wasn't anybody at the door. But, and then I was like, okay, funny. You can't knock at the door on nights where I have to get up to go to work the next morning. So, but I set kind of office hours with them and boundaries with them. And they're more compliant and more respectful than the living.
Right.
I agree. I agree. I think sometimes that you literally, like you said, you can get spirits that are a little bit more compliant with, okay, you don't want me here. How are we going to work it?
Correct.
Because they want that connection, so they don't want it to close. So they,
you know, some of them might be attached. You know, we're talking about, you know, moving into a new house type thing. So some people could be attached to the house. Some people are your ancestors and they're following you, or some people are transient spirits, but they're seeing that beacon come from you and they're recognizing that gift from you, saying, hey, this person's got gifts, and they're able to talk to me and they're thrilled to be able to communicate. So I also take it as a compliment that they chose to come and speak to me. So, you know, it's all in how you want to look at it. You know, if you look at it like, wow, thank you for wanting to talk with me, it's, you know, really not so fearful.
It is a compliment. A lot of times when I get mediumship readings, a lot of my ex-husband's ancestors will want to be on my altar. And I'm like, because they always like me better anyway. Even when they were alive, they liked me better. But it is one of those things where it's like you're asking me to elevate you and to take care of you even in death. And that's an honor.
Absolutely.
It really is. You have to look at it that you're not going to them just to get something from them.
Correct.
You're actually having a relationship that continues.
And that is the big thing. It is a relationship. It is the same as forming a friendship and having friends or having family in your house. You know, I speak with and work with, you know, not only just my ancestor altar that is always going, but with everybody that's in the house. I acknowledge them. I talk to them. It is a relationship. And with like any relationship, you work at that relationship.
True. Let's get 2 more questions in before we end it, before we let Miss Ruth go so they can contact her.
A lot of people see seances on TV and Hollywood and stuff. How would you
That's a good one.
Clear up the stigma behind, you know, seances, the Ouija boards, tabletop, like as a whole?
Okay. So, you know, one of the things that I've seen lately is a lot of people will refer to seances as group readings. To me, that is not a seance. Like, you know, sitting in a room with, you know, somebody, a medium standing up there just giving messages and not, you know, saying anything wrong about how somebody does one. But to me personally, I'm more old school with seance. That's not, to me, that's a group reading. That's not necessarily a seance. To me, a seance is a smaller, more intimate group of people, usually about 6, typically no more than 8, and you meet up weekly at the same time. You have an appointment with spirit and you try to be in the same position, same place, same time every week, and you allow that energy to rise and rise and rise, and you get some really amazing results and some a lot of activity, particularly if you can do it in a room that you can close off and not use and not open in between week to week. That's more of your traditional seance type. Ouija boards, again, like I said, I'm a collector of them, and I've not ever had a bad experience, but I've always used them responsibly. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the 10 or older, because 10-year-olds don't really know what they're doing with them. I hate this time of year for Ouija boards because kids want to buy them and go drink and hang out in the cemetery. And they are a divination tool. Ouija boards can be very used, and they can be very good at communicating and, you know, speaking to the other side. I don't really see them much different. You know, people will get a pendulum and a pendulum mat with the letters or the yes, no. Well, you just made a Ouija board. You know, your pendulum is a planchette and your, you know, board is the mat. So any tool that you're using to reach to the other side is still exactly. Right. So, you know, but Ouija boards, if you use them responsibly, I do not see as same as any tool. You should always understand it, always be responsible, and always be respectful. I don't ever use them if I'm very, very tired, if I'm exhausted. I won't open any type of communication with anybody. You know, if your energy is not where it's supposed to be, if you're sick, if you're tired, if you're under the influence of any type of, you know, if I have to take a pain pill or something like that, you know, any type of alcohol or things like that, you know, you want to be a clean vessel. You want to be at your best when you're allowing spirit to come through. And that's for your sake, as well as, you know, honoring spirit. You know, I want to be you know, give the clearest messages that I possibly can for them. So if you're responsible with any of those tools, I do not think that you will have a problem with them.
Right. So, as we close, what would be your takeaway with being a medium? What would be what should everyone follow per se when it comes to being a medium? How should they practice? Things like that.
So my takeaway would be to know yourself, to trust whatever path, so that you know that you have a support system behind you, whether it's an ancestor, a guide, a deity, whatever your belief is, and then practice. And the more you practice, the more you connect, the less fearful, the clearer you're going to become, and the more you're going to trust. And it is when I say you'll never be alone, you'll never be alone. It's like having best friends with you all the time. They may give you answers you don't want to hear, but they're always going to give you truthful answers. And it is absolutely a wonderful journey if you're willing to put the work into it.
Right.
That's beautiful. You're right. Thank you so much. I enjoyed this, and you gave a lot of good information. A lot.
Well, thank you both so much for inviting me. It was wonderful.
No, and when we go to New Orleans, you got to give us the dates, because you might end up and get you some other people that kind of join in on it too.
Sherwin, I'll be calling to bug you for dates.
Okay.
You're going to keep up on them. We are.
Most
Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was a really good talk. I hope you got some questions answered, and, we'll be back next month to do some stuff.
Most definitely.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.